is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Jada here, back with another video. And today we're going to be diving back into 90 Day Fiance Happily Ever After. And we got some updates, okay? We got some updates with regards to the couples. So first we have Gino and Jasmine. So we kind of left off with them arguing about him not having the money to hire a lawyer. And he just kind of walks away from her in this coffee shop. And you could very clearly see the frustration on her face because she wants to be there with Gino. At the same time, it's just like, how did you make this mistake? You know what I'm saying? Like, why didn't you seek some legal counsel to get some feedback with regards to what you should actually be filing regarding Jasmine's kids? So they go to see their wedding photo album and Jasmine gets really emotional because obviously reliving that moment through pictures is a fantastic feeling, but at the same time it makes her really sad because of what she's going through right now with regards to her kids not being able to possibly come to the States to be with her for 2 years, okay, because of Gino's mistake. So Gino agrees to do everything it takes to get the kids over to the US, and when Jasmine gets her green card, she'd be able to travel a few times a year to go visit them, at least until they were able to get the visas for the children to come over. But the thing about this is that Jasmine was genuinely considering leaving and going back to Panama, which would obviously render her whole like status kind of void, and the whole filing thing would be kind of for nothing. So, you know, obviously Gino was just kind of like, oh, well, you know, he was just kind of glazing over that and didn't really take it seriously, but she was being serious. Like, that was the first time she was genuinely considering leaving and going back to her country. Now, obviously, I think with regards to them as a couple, it's going to be very interesting moving forward how they're really going to manage that, and also Jasmine's emotions, because I do feel like Jasmine could obviously fly off the handle pretty quickly with regards to pretty much anything that we've seen over the years that they have been on this show. But I think now that this is like really serious, obviously she has gotten very upset with regards to a lot of serious things with Gino, in terms of obviously him sharing the nude photos with his ex, okay, nude photos of Jasmine that ruined her life. But in this case with the children, I think this is a totally different thing, and I really feel bad for her situation, and understand why she would definitely consider leaving if this doesn't really work out. Now let's move on to Rob and Sophie. So Rob ends up meeting Sophie's best guy friend from the UK, which I think is very interesting that you have a friend that's a guy. Okay, number one, he's a guy, he's single, and he's coming all the way from the UK to visit you in Austin, Texas. Like, I don't know how to feel about that. Like, all by himself. I would definitely kind of look at that a little bit suspect as well. So, yeah, I kind of don't blame Rob for feeling a little bit of a ways in that moment. Obviously, yes, I do think that occasionally men and women might be able to be friends, but like, I feel like there has to be so many boundaries set, and I think it's just very easy to cross those boundaries. So that's what kind of makes me nervous. Obviously trust has to be involved, but yeah, that would just make me feel kind of uncomfortable. I'm just going to be real. Y'all could come for me in the comments. Obviously some people will definitely feel differently from me, but I just feel a little bit weird when it comes to possibly my man having female friends that he goes out with, and that would come all the way across the world just to visit. Why? You know, it's just a little weird to me, but you know, whatever. So Rob meets Sophie's guy friend. He comes over, and Rob finds out from both of them that they actually used to date each other when I believe they were teenagers. And I get what Sophie was saying with regards to it not really coming into her mind to say to Rob, and she doesn't really consider that as like a real relationship, or this guy friend of hers as an actual ex, because it happened so long ago and their relationship was really like juvenile. But at the same time, I would have found some time before this friend came over, because you already know that Rob Rob's been cheated on in the past. It was with this ex-girlfriend of his, her guy friend as well, I believe. So you gotta take that into consideration when it comes to you bringing up this information to him now in front of everyone, how he would feel, and really think about why he would react the way that he ends up reacting. I would have really, if I was in Sophie's shoes, really found some time to tell Rob like, hey, we used to date, but it wasn't that serious. You know, like at least say that much, but she didn't say anything. So you already know that Rob was feeling a little bit of a ways. After this, even though they had a little bit of a tiff at this little pool party, Sophie decides to go back home to be with Rob, and he also gives Sophie back her wedding ring that she lost. But what I found interesting is that he was like, oh, if it's not her ring, because, you know, after he gave it to her in her breakfast plate or whatever, he gave it to her kind of stuck in the cheese, and she was looking at it and she was like, this isn't my ring. And I was getting scared because I was like, girl, what do you mean this ain't your ring? And what made it strange too is that Rob was like, well, if it's not her ring, I'm not gonna tell her that it's not hers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna say nothing. But then shortly after that, Sophie was like, oh, I have these fashion rings that kind of look like it, but it's not the real thing. So in a sense, I don't know if Sophie maybe saved him from anything. I don't know, but Rob is strange because obviously we've had the issues with him cheating before. So I don't know, you know, like that was kind of a weird comment from Rob. I looked at that with a side eye. When Sophie decides to go out and hang out with one of her friends, the friend that she was staying with this whole time before moving back in with Rob, she kind of discloses to her friend that her and Rob's sex life isn't the greatest and hasn't been since they've gotten married. And that is very worrisome. Even the friend was like, yeah, that worries me, you know, because it's like, what do you mean? Y'all are married and you trying to tell me y'all haven't had sex in a very long time? Like, so yeah, she was basically saying to her friend that according to Rob, I guess he needs like role play and stuff like that to get him in the mood. So she was just like, yeah, I'm not doing all that every time we have sex. Like, what is this about? So she's kind of left wondering that if all this cheating that he was doing online with these women, if that kind of had a part to play in him now not really wanting just Sophie. Like, she has to dress up and do things for him to be in that mood. It's weird. So yeah, that's very interesting. Let's move on to Manuel and Ashley. So they are now heading to New York City to visit Manuel's family that actually live in New Jersey. We find out he got it kind of mixed up. It wasn't New York. It was actually Newark, New Jersey, not New York, okay? So those are two completely different places, obviously. And he still doesn't want Ashley to say much about her beliefs and practices to his family, at least not just yet. So I don't know when exactly is going to be a good time, but obviously right now I do have to say I agree with Manuel. I wouldn't bring that up right now. If that's the first time you're meeting them, I would kind of just let that sit for a little bit and be very cautious about what you say, considering this is the very first meeting. But eventually, yes, she probably would have to say something. And I think obviously with them being very Catholic, they might have a weird reaction to it. But yeah, it's going to probably be interesting. But the trip isn't really off to that great of a start because Manuel is getting hungry. Obviously, after all that flying back and forth, you know, traveling can be very tiring, and also you get hungry. So I can understand why he's not in the best of moods, but Ashley, she just sees this as like him kind of putting a damper on the trip, and she's just dilly-dallying, and he's starving, it seems. Obviously, when you're like hangry, you're in a mood, you know, and she also tries to explain the term of hangry to him at one point. But yeah, he was that in that moment, and I understand it, but she started reading cards and I'm like, Ashley, you know this man is hungry, wants food. Like, can you just get ready so y'all could leave the hotel room and get something to eat? Like, like she was just doing way too much. That was just a very interesting interaction. But now we have Kobe and Emily. So now Kobe and Emily are planning a traditional Cameroonian wedding for his family and friends while they're there. But his friends are just trying, in my opinion, to start unnecessary drama where it doesn't have to be, if you ask me. And Emily is not obviously like a traditional Cameroonian wife. Okay, we know that she's from America. She's gonna have a different attitude. She's gonna talk to you a different way. And that's just kind of what it is. You kind of have to know that she's not gonna be your wife in the traditional sense that you know of from your country, because she's not from your country. So a lot of his friends were just kind of saying that she's bossy and loud. And Kobe, you know, at one point he was playing handball with his friends and he already has an injured knee. And his friends kind of feel a way about Emily coming over at one point to check on him and kind of tell him like, hey, could you elevate your knee and all that stuff, and making sure he was okay. They saw that as an issue. They saw that as her being bossy. And I was like, so you're trying to tell me that checking on your husband who's already injured, has a knee brace on, you're telling me that checking on her husband is a problem? Like, I can understand how it could be considered a little pushy, like if he's around his friends and he already said like, it's okay, I got it, and you keep pushing the issue, how that could be kind of like, you know, you trying to be a little bossy. But at the end of the day, she's just trying to make sure her husband is okay. Like, what? So anyways, when Emily decides to go over after the event, she goes over to Kobe's friends, and that's when they kind of give up some information with regards to Kobe's ex-girlfriend that he had in Cameroon before he left to go to China, where he would eventually meet Emily. They bring up the whole ex-girlfriend thing, and according to the friends, he supposedly left this ex-girlfriend behind, but they were possibly still in a relationship. I don't know, but according to Emily, Kobe said to her that he was single at the time of their meeting. So yeah, but now they're kind of mad also, these friends of Kobe's. They're mad also that Emily decided to invite them all out to a club to get some drinks and hang out and try to hash out what's, like, I guess, going on between Emily and these friends of his. It goes left pretty quickly because one of the friends, at least one of the best friends it seems, I think it was Valerie, his name, he was saying to Emily and also Kobe, because Kobe was sitting right there, he says, you know, usually in Cameroon, the wife, they would just kind of invite us over to the house. They would also cook for us, like the wife would cook for us. And I'm like, how the heck she gonna do that when she don't live in Cameroon? Like, they aren't staying at a house, they're in a hotel room. So how is she gonna cook for you? How are you gonna come over to their house? They have no house. So she's doing the best that she can, and clearly these friends, they do not care. And I just think it's really annoying that they're really just trying to start stuff where things don't need to be started. And now they're trying to drive a wedge between Emily and Kobe, who otherwise are relatively good. They're probably one of the strongest couples in this bunch, if you ask me. So now we're gonna move on to a couple that has had problems, and real problems at that, for quite some time, because they've been on the 90 Day Fiance franchise for quite some time. Ed and Liz. Ed and Liz are having some difficulties again. No surprises there, of course. There was an argument apparently over Liz's daughter's food being too spicy, and it occurs in front of Ed's family. So according to Liz, this happened while they were over at, I think it was Ed's sister's house, and I think Ed had maybe prepared their taco pasta. I think they said it was. He had prepared the taco pasta a little too spicy for Liz's daughter. The daughter was like, oh, it's too spicy, and Ed was pretty much saying, according to Liz now, Ed was saying, you know, stop being a baby, you could handle it, that type of thing. And I guess Liz didn't really like that he was downplaying what was going on with her daughter, and things escalated really quickly, and again, it happened all in front of Ed's family, who was over at the time. So it was embarrassing. I can understand how that would definitely kind of make you feel a ways, but Ed's reaction is a little overboard if you ask me. Liz says she kind of woke up to Ed gone. He left the house and cancels the wedding. He cancels the wedding venue. He calls the guy, cancels everything pretty much. And basically without even speaking to Liz about it. She had to find out from the guy calling her saying, oh, I'm sorry to hear about your wedding being called off. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, what? So Ed did not even give her a heads up, didn't even talk about it, just cancels the wedding. And I even said in my other video that I just don't think Ed and Liz are going to make it. I feel like they've had so many issues in the past. Also, them even trying to work together in terms of the real estate business. I just knew none of that was going to work out, including the relationship. And they had already called off their engagement several times before. So it doesn't surprise me that this is happening yet again. Now, Ed, in his little interview, he says that because of that moment, he had this epiphany that they really should just go their separate ways. Him and Liz were just not meant to be together, and Liz just needs to accept that. Even though she's the one that had to make all these sacrifices, leaving her job after just recently getting a promotion, moving to another state that she's never been to before, and also moving with her daughter. She has to uproot her life and also her daughter's life to come and be with you. And after just a couple months and a small little fight, you just cancel everything without even talking to her first, to see if y'all could even work it out. It's just, obviously, I do think they should have never even been back together and moved to Arkansas. I don't think Liz should have given up her whole life for this man, but she did, and that's her choice. But at the end of the day, I think Ed should have given her that opportunity to at least talk about it with him first, and then they come to that conclusion together, and him not just making that decision all on his lonesome. But that's what he chose to do. Now, in this upcoming episode, it looks as though Ed is now trying to have a face-to-face conversation with Liz to, I guess, let her down easy. But how easy can you let her down if you already canceled everything and she had to find out about it secondhand? Let's move on to Nicole and Mahmoud, who I decided to nickname in my last video Moody. So things are still not going well between them, and it just seems to be getting worse day by day, minute by minute, and Moody is still not having that great of a time. There's not really much affection being shown, but I do think obviously a lot of things kind of play into that in terms of Moody not really being into all that, culturally speaking, at least because of his background, and also because they've been arguing a lot. So there's a lot of reasons that probably tie into not really showing affection. And Nicole had wanted him to also meet her friends at one point, so they were going out to dinner, get some drinks, but because she had these little peepholes in the back of her dress on her back, you could kind of see some skin on her back, and he just was like, yeah, either you change or I'm not going out to meet your friends. And Nicole decided, you know what, I'm not going to change. You're just gonna have to accept it and move on. And even though I do think, looking at the dress, it was relatively conservative in the front and also like the length of it, I do think she was kind of pushing it a little bit with the peepholes. Okay, I'm just gonna be real. If it was just one, I could have kind of been like, okay, well, it's not that bad. But it was 3 of them down her back. So I could understand why a little bit, to an extent, okay, why Moody would be like, oh, no, you know, you need to change, right? Especially with him coming from a country that's obviously uber conservative, and they don't show any skin really except for their face, you know? So they had kind of agreed at least a little while before that to kind of meet each other halfway, but I do feel like Nicole has been pushing Moody a little too much too fast, just in my opinion, at least watching the episodes back. But it literally hasn't been more than a week that he's been in LA, and she, I feel, has just been kind of testing it a little too much. So because of this issue with the dress, he just kind of casually keeps bringing up the word divorce, and I'm just like, so is that what you want, Moody? Is that what you want? Because I feel like at this point, yeah, you should probably get one, you know? But regardless, Nicole decides to leave him and go hang out with her friends. She left him at the apartment, and her friends end up coming back to the place to meet him, and he wasn't really expecting that. So he's not used to hanging out with women outside of his family and wife, so that was interesting. And then also Nicole had took some alcohol that Moody didn't know about from her freezer, so he was feeling kind of weird about that too. And also when the friends asked him about why he didn't come to the dinner, he just kind of gives them a roundabout answer, but it doesn't say anything about the situation with Nicole's dress. So Nicole felt like he was making her look like a liar in front of her friends, and she really starts to talk to him really nastily, so he walks away. And it was definitely, in my opinion, I think that was an unnecessary thing to do on Nicole's part. I didn't really understand why she did that. It was like, y'all could have talked about this later. But Anyways, so one of Nicole's friends tried to calm him down, but then she sees, at least Nicole, she sees Moody kind of touching his suitcase. So she kind of just snaps after that, and eventually he decides to leave the apartment. And I just think this is just a hot mess, honestly. I think Nicole is a firecracker at this point, you know, just ready to kind of take off and explode. And it's kind of similar for Moody a little bit because he's in a whole other country. I just think that a lot hasn't really been taken into consideration on Nicole's part. I think she just keeps pushing and pushing, and it's just like, I don't know what to say about them anymore at this point. But we're gonna move on to Alexi and Lauren. Now, I've never seen them before. I didn't really know much about their story prior to this episode. So Alexi is from Israel and Lauren is from Florida. I think Hollywood, Florida to be exact. I don't know. But either way. So they have 2 daughters together, and now she's talking about getting a mommy makeover, and no one seems to be all that supportive of it. And now Lauren's mom is also trying to get Alexi to convince her not to do it. And they don't really have the best relationship, it seems, but they're cordial with each other. But apparently a little while ago, Alexi wanted to have Lauren and their kids move to Israel for a few years. But considering what's been going on as of late, I think it was probably a good idea that they didn't do that. So yeah, but I would have to say with regards to them, they have not presented much information, so that's kind of all I could talk about. We're just gonna move on to Patrick and Thais. That's the last couple that we're gonna discuss. They're now planning a trip to visit Thais's family back in Brazil after she's been gone for 2 years that she's been in the States with Patrick. And they're also going to be traveling with their dog and daughter, and now Thais's dad also wants Patrick to ask him for his blessing. Again, he had actually asked before, I think they were actually getting married, and Thais's dad was like, yeah, nah. So yeah, apparently now he wants Patrick to ask for it yet again, and Patrick is just like, for what? Like, we already married, like what do I need to do that for? But I can understand, you know, I could get it in terms of Thais kind of pushing for Patrick to talk to her dad, because obviously you'd want to have that blessing from your father if you're really close to him, and especially as a daughter. But now Patrick's brother John is trying to go over to Brazil with them, and Thais is already annoyed. But Patrick is trying to convince her that he'll be okay and he'll be on his best behavior while over there, because that's already a lot of issues, you know, in terms of Patrick not really being all that connected to her dad and also overall her family. So I can understand to an extent why she'd be kind of nervous about John coming over there, because he seems to not really have any type of filter in terms of the things that he says. So Thais and Patrick, they land a day before John. They land in Brazil and they head over to Patrick's apartment. So that's technically his dad that owns it, but they do pay the rent for the apartment. And the very first night that they're there, they're trying to settle in. The dad comes in and he's already kind of making demands about them painting the apartment and whatnot. And Thais kind of feels as though in some ways the relationship that Patrick has with his dad, it seems like his dad is just trying to take advantage of him and the whole situation. And even though they're really just paying the rent for the apartment to help his dad out, Thais just kind of feels as though he's taking advantage of Patrick trying to help him out and is really kind of pushing the limits on that relationship. But also, I have to think about it from a safety standpoint. They're only going to be there for a week. Where the heck are they going to go while they're painting the inside of this apartment? Not saying that it's going to happen, but if they do actually follow through on that favor, where are they going to put the baby? Where are they going to sleep? Like, those paint fumes, they're going to need to die down before you go back in it. I just don't understand in terms of the dad thinking that through. Yeah, like, no. But that's pretty much it on these couples as of right now. Y'all can let me know your thoughts if you've been keeping up with the show down in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.